Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Revealing the Dark Web. This presentation is part of a webinar series we'll be doing that's focused on current cybersecurity trends and what you can do to fight back. Let's review the plan for today's presentation. First, we'll take just a few minutes to introduce ourselves and our friend Katie from ID Agent. Then, Jason, our Chief Solutions Officer, will review what today's security landscape looks like, and we'll learn what it is that we're really up against as far as cybercrime goes. Katie will then do a deep dive into the dark web. She'll help us understand what the dark web is, how credentials end up there, and what damage can be done once those credentials are acquired. Thankfully, there's quite a lot that businesses today can do to protect themselves. So Jason is going to review some of the solutions and best practices that can go quite a long way in keeping your organization more secure. We're then going to wrap it up with our Q&A. I'll be your host today. My name is Eleni Lepo, and I coordinate all of the events here at Kite, from our webinars and in-house events to the trade shows we participate in across the country. In fact, if any of our insurance agency guests here today are planning on attending AppliedNet in just a few weeks, you'll have to be sure to stop by the booth and say hello. I also have with me today Jason Goebel, Kite Technologies Chief Solutions Officer. Jason is an Arizona licensed agent and has spent almost a decade at Kite helping businesses understand and improve their security posture and get the most from their technology investment. For those of you who are not current clients and may not be familiar with Kite Technology, we are a full-service IT and consulting firm. We provide comprehensive and proactive technology management to small and mid-sized businesses so they can run more effectively and improve their business performance. Our services include infrastructure management, security and compliance, help desk support, cloud adoption strategies, and consulting. We support businesses in many different industries, such as independent insurance agencies, nonprofits, healthcare practices, and other professional organizations. Kite has been around for more than 26 years, and today we are proud to support more than 3,600 end users across the United States. Last but not least, we're also actively involved in education. And you can often find our team presenting at national conferences and regional events on topics such as cybersecurity, modern technology trends, cloud adoption, and other business and technology-focused topics. Also joining us today is Katie Wallace from ID Agent. Katie, we are so excited that you were able to partner with us in putting together today's presentation. Would you please take a minute to tell us a little bit about yourself and ID Agent?
Absolutely. I want to thank you guys again for having me here today and letting me, be a part of this production. A little bit of background about ID Agent. Our award-winning platform combines human and artificial intelligence with search capabilities to help identify, analyze, and proactively monitor for an organization's compromised or stolen employee or customer data that could be floating out there around on the dark web. ID Agent was born because of a data breach where one employee's exposed credential led to over 800,000 more. Our company was founded back in 2016, but with today's cybersecurity landscape, we're currently flourishing and monitoring for several thousands of exposed credentials. We are also headquartered in Maryland, not far outside of Washington, D.C. Now I want to turn things back over to our friends at Kite Technology and let them take it over from here.
Great. Thanks so much, Katie, for being with us today. We are looking forward to hearing from you again a little later in our presentation. So now it's time to turn it over to Jason, who's going to talk about what today's security landscape looks like as he gives us a better idea of what we're really up against. Jason?
Thanks, Eleni. Today's security landscape is definitely not a pretty picture. It's a war zone. Reports of credential compromise have increased 280% since 2016. In a recent survey conducted by email security firm Proofpoint, 65% of people surveyed had experienced credential compromise. 49% had been victims of malware. And for those of us that live and breathe security, these stats really don't come as a surprise. And here's why. Between business and personal accounts, the average person has 191 logins to manage. Your computer, your bank, Facebook, your credit cards. For insurance agencies, it's even worse. Countless carrier websites, all requiring their own unique login credentials. So that's a huge number. So it's no surprise that when surveyed, 61% of people admitted to using identical or similar passwords in multiple places. So if you can hack your way into one, there's a good chance you just gained access to quite a few. The end result is that 81% of all data breaches are directly related to compromised credentials. Now, those are all pretty staggering numbers, but that's because we're no longer talking about a few hackers in their basement having a bit of fun. We're talking about a global economy. Cybercrime generates an estimated $1.5 trillion in revenue annually, and that number just continues to climb. Data trading, like the buying and selling of credentials, accounts for $160 billion of that revenue. So malware is now a commodity with a sophisticated supply chain. Would-be hackers no longer have to develop their own tools. They can buy them, they can rent the services to deploy them. For less than $1,000 of investment, a would-be hacker can acquire everything he or she needs to fund a year's worth of hacking endeavors. And that's including the tech support. So it's pretty clear, credentials are big business. They're being bought, sold at record numbers, and all of those shady deals go down on the dark web.
Thanks, Jason. It's definitely eye-opening to see what cybercrime has evolved into. Let's go a little deeper now as we discuss what the dark web is and learn about what kind of transactions are taking place there. For this part, we're going to turn it over to our industry expert, Katie.
Absolutely. So as we see on the screen here, we might have all seen this iceberg before, but it truly is an accurate representation of the internet. Looking at the iceberg, what you and I know is the internet is actually only the surface web. And, you know, as part of the World Wide Web, this is what's really only available to the general public. The surface web is only consistent of about 4% of the information that is on the internet. Moving a little bit deeper, we reference the deep web. The deep web, you know, the contents are hidden, but this includes very common uses such as, you know, web email, online banking, or private or restricted access to profiles. Some web forums that require registration for viewing content and service that you may pay for are also part of the deep web. Think of those as, you know, video on demand services and some online magazines and newspapers. As we get a little bit deeper, and what we want to focus on for today's webinar is the dark web. The dark web is truly what lives below the surface. The dark web is part of the internet that isn't visible to any search engine and requires use of an anonymous browser called Tor. The Tor browser was actually originally developed by the US Department of Defense. The dark web is an all illicit deals and seedy undertaking. It's actually used for an array of purposes. Journalists may use the dark web to help protect the anonymity of their sources, and the government may also use the dark web in whistleblower situations. The dark web does carry a notorious reputation, and it is a haven for a lot of criminals, terrorists, and nefarious sites, and truly everything in between. As an estimated 96% of the internet does live below the surface in the dark web. It is a huge marketplace for stolen data and personal information outside of some other things that are traded back and forth on the dark web. After a data breach or a hacking incident, personal information is often bought and sold on the dark web by identity thieves, looking to make good money off of your name and any numbers or information that's associated with you. As we move into the next slide here, I just want to show you how legitimate sites are on the dark web. I asked our team of analysts for a screenshot to share with you. So the screenshot that we're looking at here is from a website on the dark web that is selling credit card information. The selling of credit card and debit card information is very popular, and this site sells information from $5 up to $110. This is a full package purchase, so the fraudsters include the stolen name that is associated with the credit card, the address, even social security number, and sometimes the birth date. That way, when somebody's buying these details, those credit cards are ready to use as soon as they arrive in the mail. Speaking of, these sites will even mail you these cards discreetly, so your neighbors have no idea what you're up to. Another thing, businesses run on the dark web, they're out there to make money. So here, as you can see, they're thanking you, for giving them the chance to sell these cards. It's truly run like a business, and unfortunately, it's your data that is being sold. As we move into the next slide, what I want to talk about is how your data winds up on the dark web. Phishing attacks are a persistent threat to business. A staggering 90% of data breaches involve phishing. We've actually all likely have received phishing emails before, whether we've realized it or not. Phishing is an attempt to acquire personal data, such as usernames, passwords, or other financial information via impersonation or spoofing. A classic example of a phishing email is one, from Netflix that says your account has been suspended. It asks you to click a link and to give your account details to reactivate your account. Attackers are then harvesting those details and other information and using them to commit fraud or to sell them on the dark web. The next thing I want to point out is malvertisements. Malvertisements may look like regular advertisements, but they actually contain a code that attacks visitor systems directly or redirects the visitor to a browser, to a malicious website. Malvertisement campaigns are attractive to cybercriminals because they can easily be spread across a large number of legitimate websites, making the end user think it's okay to click those ads. This is a huge threat in today's security landscape, just because think of how many ads you get after simply Googling one item. A great example of this would be the New York Times. They were actually hosting a banner ad that attempted to social engineer people into installing a rogue antivirus tool. The ad was live for upwards of 24 hours before the New York Times even noticed the malicious nature of the ad and were able to disable it. I do want to speak a little bit about watering holes as well, because they are truly targeted attacks. An attacker will collect information about the victim just from the website that he or she usually browses. So with a watering hole attack, the cybercriminal isn't just trying to get your data, he's watching you. What they do is then they will infect the websites that you visit the most with malware to try to get into the victim's computer or install a different type of Trojan that can connect and can command the control of that particular PC. An attack group actually infected Forbes.com with a watering hole style of attack that targeted visitors in the financial service and defense industries. Last but not least, we have web attacks. And today, many websites, particularly large, high-traffic websites, serve up a lot of dynamic content, which is held in databases. That's exactly what Google does when you run a search. As an end user interacts with the sites that come up, information that is read and written in those databases, what a cybercriminal does, he will take that information and inject what we call an SQL injection into those. This technique works by finding flaws in a website or the database that's running behind them, and in many cases, sites that have poor cybersecurity, and they will infect those websites with a virus or forms that lead to, scraping for companies' credentials or even personal credentials. Before I move into my next slide, I do want to launch a poll. I just want to see a show of hands who out there thinks that their data could potentially be out there on the dark web. As I move into my next slide here, I want to talk about what happens after, the data is collected by the cybercriminals and what that means for you. Ransomware and data breaches are a huge security problem for any size organization. According to a quarterly report, 64% of malicious emails are sent using ransomware to obtain data, outside of just phishing for that information. Remember hearing about the WannaCry virus targeting computers running on Microsoft Windows operating system? What happened is with the virus, it encrypted the data and demanded a ransomware payment in the form of cryptocurrency. Many attacks don't have to be as notorious as the WannaCry virus to take a company down, though. Most ransomware attacks don't have a happy ending, as all data on the dark web has a price tag. What happens now? As we move into the next slide, I want to talk about how your customers are the #1 target. Companies serving customers have the responsibility to keep their data safe. Keeping private information secure is an expectation, and in some cases, it truly is the law. So when personal information is compromised, customers feel the right to feel violated. Ultimately, a company's failure to protect a customer's private information can and will live forever in the age of the internet, bruising your company's reputation indefinitely. For SMEs, costly data breaches can not only bruise a company's reputation, but they can also be financially draining. Once hit with a security breach, many operations lack the financial resources to hire a PR firm to handle that bad press, let alone employ the legal team to handle things from that front. Loss of private data could also lead to massive fines by authority. Whether it be HIPAA or the GDPR or any other regulations, such fines can also be financially devastating. With a lack of resources, businesses often succumb to bad press and can become bankrupt in court. A study found that 65% of data breach victims lost trust in an organization as a result in the breach, and that 80% of consumers will defect from that business if their information is compromised in a security breach. 60% of small businesses will also fold within 6 months of a cyber attack due to all the financial and reputation repercussions. As we reference back to our poll, when we move into the next slide here, I want to point out that 76% of registries, said it was a possibility that their information was found on the dark web. And when we show this next slide here, I want to say that we did go ahead, we ran a scan of the companies that are attending this webinar, and it turns out that there were over 1,000 exposed credentials just for the registrants. The most recent exposure actually happened on September 24th, so it was only a few days ago. This just shows you how real and how often cyber criminals try to obtain data. With that being said, I want to turn things back over to the Kite technology team.
Wow, thanks, Katie, for sharing this valuable information with us. That's quite a number. Obviously, the business of selling credentials on the dark web is alive and well. This is something that can affect any one of us, no matter how careful we might be. As business professionals with access to company and client data, this is definitely something that needs to be taken seriously. Jason is going to take over, and he's going to talk about some best practices and solutions that can help protect yourself and your business. Jason?
Thanks, Eleni. So there's a lot you can do to avoid becoming a statistic. We have some upcoming webinars that'll dive deeper into each of these topics, but I wanted to highlight most of them today. Security awareness programs, password management, multi-factor authentication, and of course, dark web monitoring. Now, a security awareness program. Tricking employees into giving up their passwords is definitely the business to be in. Email attacks have increased by 65% over the last year and now account for 90% of all data breaches. So this means that your employees are on the front lines of the fight for data security. It's important to equip them with the tools necessary to spot and avoid email attacks by developing a good, robust security awareness program. Now, a good security awareness program needs to have 3 components: training, testing, and reporting. The training should be easy to understand and easy to fit into a busy schedule. We recommend short 10 to 15-minute videos that focus on specific types of threats. Then you want to put that training to the test by sending fake emails to your employees. By doing that, you'll be able to find the weak spots and adjust your training accordingly. You're going to find out that most of your employees are in pretty good shape, but you might have a small percentage that need that extra hand holding. And both training, participation, and the testing should be reportable. This is not only good for compliance, but also for measuring the long-term effectiveness of your program. Password management, again, 191 logins, that's a big number. So password managers are a great way to help folks practice better password security. By using a password manager, you can easily create and store unique passwords for hundreds of logins. There are many password managers out there, such as RoboForm, LastPass, Dashlane. While most have a free version for personal use, it's worthwhile to step up to the paid version. The paid versions of these programs are going to bring some excellent features, such as centralized employee management and secure sharing of universal logins. Multi-factor authentication is one of the most effective tools in the fight against credential compromise. Sometimes it's referred to as two-factor authentication or two-step verification. MFA strengthens your username and password by requiring one more piece of information before letting you in. This can often be a fingerprint or a code sent to your phone as a text message. Smartphone apps like Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator make it easy to store and manage MFA for multiple websites and applications. Now, MFA is usually a free feature, but it's typically turned off by default. So wherever possible, you definitely want to turn this on. You definitely want to turn on MFA, and that goes for both your business and your personal accounts. So here's the thing. Despite all of our best efforts, it's still going to happen. LinkedIn, Experian, MyFitnessPal, eventually somebody somewhere is going to drop the ball and our credentials are going to get compromised. So it's important to know what's out there. And with 61% of folks using identical or similar passwords on multiple sites, a quick response time is going to be critical to prevent additional compromise. So that's where we can help. Through our partnership with ID Agent, we're now able to offer real-time dark web monitoring. Their platform monitors millions of sources on the dark web, chat rooms, black market websites, peer-to-peer networks, and they monitor 24/7, 365. So when credentials are found on the dark web, an alert gets sent out so that our technicians can work with you to secure accounts, change passwords, and identify any other items that may be at risk. You'll also get monthly status reports indicating all the compromised credentials or a clean bill of health. Dark web monitoring is priced per domain. It's $100 per month for the primary domain and $50 a month for each additional domain. We also include all the public IP addresses of all the business locations and personal addresses of all the owners at no additional cost. There is a one-time setup fee of $199, and we do ask for a one-year commitment. For spending your time with us today, we'd like to thank you all by waiving the setup fee and giving you the first month of monitoring at no cost. We'd also like to give every one of you a free dark web scan. So shortly after this webinar, a member of our team is going to be reaching out. We're going to share the report, go over what we found, and talk about what we can do about it. So if you're ready to get started with dark web monitoring, or you'd like to know more about Kite's IT services, you can send us a message now via the chat panel. You can shoot us an email at engage@kitetechgroup.com or give us a call, 410-356-3113.
Thank you, Jason and Katie, for sharing this excellent information with us. In preparing for this presentation, even I was surprised to learn of the true extent of the dark web and the impact that stolen credentials can have. I'm so excited that we'll be continuing this series with a webinar focused on implementing a security awareness program. This webinar will be taking place in November, so be on the lookout as registration information will be emailed out in the next few weeks. So we're now going to begin answering some of the questions submitted during the presentation. Please feel free to still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee panel, and we'll try to get to as many as time permits. So Katie, I'm going to direct this first question to you, and it is, should I be worried about additional exposure on the dark web after having my domain scanned?
Yeah, and that is a great question. Just because the dark web isn't as easily accessible to you and I, this information is still considered publicly available. Our analysts do not know who our partners are, who their clients are. So when we're pulling the data, we're just making sure that it's available to you guys. You know that this is out there. So in the short answer, no, you should not be concerned, having any more risks after your domain being scanned. Think of it as considering yourself knowing what information is out there about your company that you might have not known prior.
Okay, thanks, Katie. The next question, Jason, if you can take this one, can personal emails be monitored?
Yeah, absolutely. As a business owner and as an employee in the business, often there's really no difference between what you do in your personal life and what you do in your professional life. You can't really tell when one ends and one begins. So it's absolutely critical that both be monitored. For those of you that have, personal email addresses that might be an employee of the company, there are some other available. They're not as good. They're not as comprehensive as what ID Agent is doing, but it's absolutely better than nothing. So we're going to be sharing that information when we reach out too. I bring that up because I noticed we did have a couple of people that signed up for this webinar with personal email addresses. So they may not even have a business for all I know. But definitely want to get that information out and help wherever we can.
All right, thanks, Jason. Katie, if you could take this one, how does dark web monitoring help protect my organization?
Absolutely. Our service is designed to help both public and private sector organizations detect and mitigate cyber risks before a cyber criminal is able to leverage that stolen email address or password. Like Jason mentioned, most folks are guilty of reusing the same password or a variation of the same password amongst multiple sites. It's common that once a cyber criminal gets a hold of those credentials, that he will actually try to break into other sites just by having that one email address and that one password. So our service is designed to monitor, like Jason mentioned again, 24/7, 365 days a year, to help identify those stolen credentials and to detect it before your customers or your private information is leaked and you have to experience financial or any sort of repercussion.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Jason, if you can take this question, should I enable multi-factor authentication on my personal accounts?
Absolutely. Anytime you can turn on MFA, that's going to be a huge improvement. Your Facebook, your bank, LinkedIn, Venmo, PayPal, these are all huge opportunities for the wrong guy with the right information to really improve Christmas for his kids. Most of them do some kind of what they call conditional access. So if I'm sitting at my PC at my house, Facebook will know this and it won't challenge me as much. But if I go on the road, I go to Topeka, Kansas, and try and log in from a hotel, that's when all the challenges start happening. So it's not as intrusive as you might think. So definitely can't stress it enough. Turn on MFA anywhere, anytime.
Okay, good advice. Looks like this might be our last question unless we get any others. Can I refer clients to you for this service? Jason, could you take that one?
Sure, absolutely. I know we have a lot of insurance agencies in the audience. They have a lot of clients. I love talking about this stuff. I love helping people be more secure. I love helping people avoid funding that $1.5 trillion business out there. Yeah, if you've got people that are interested in this topic, that want to talk to it, and you want some subject matter experts in the room, definitely let us know. We'd love to help.
All right, sounds good. All right, I don't see any other questions popping up. Doesn't mean you guys can't send them through. Please feel free to still send them over via email if anything comes to mind. So I think that wraps it up. We just want to thank everyone for spending time with us today, and we hope that you found the information that we shared valuable. If you do have any additional questions, you'd like to get started with dark web monitoring, or you'd like to learn a little bit more about Kite technology, please use the chat box or send us a message via email at engage@kitetechgroup.com. You can also just give us a call at 410-356-3113. Immediately after the webinar, you will have an opportunity to complete a survey. We would really appreciate it if you would provide us some feedback. The survey is super brief. Within a day or so, you will also receive a follow-up email that will include today's recording, as well as some additional resources that you can share with the rest of your team. Also, starting next week, we will begin reaching out to each of you in order to share the results of the dark web scan, and so be on the lookout for that phone call. Thank you all again for joining us, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day.